door and then we'll get started here. So. How's it going?
Can everyone see me over there? Over here? Okay.
So yeah, welcome everyone to, I'm going to actually be doing quite a few series of these talks here. As you know, every month I'm doing different stuff on coaching sessions, and for those of you who don't know, I don't know if I told you as well, we have, anyway, I'll introduce Erin quickly. Erin Bowman is with Orthomolecular, and so she's one of the product specialists about pharmaceutical grade supplements, and we'll talk about the difference between different qualities of things there. But before I get into that, actually where I first met with Orthomolecular is one of the conferences.
Yeah.
I believe that's where it was. And so anyway, I'm doing an A4M certification kind of master's program over the next year. I didn't tell my wife how much it costs, so she doesn't know. The point is that the cardiovascular artery is a lot different than how we have been conventionally taught it's been. And when I say that, when you go to a cardiologist, they're interested in looking at the artery like a plumbing system, and it's actually a complex vasculature that happens to the arterial wall. And so how you heal, how you go about healing that artery wall is, and people have heard me say this before, there are infinite different markers that happen to the arterial wall, all result down to 3 finite responses. And the 3 finite responses are, well, who can guess one of them? Who can guess one of my 3? Sorry? Inflammation, absolutely. Inflammation is one of them. No, that's a result of, but it's inflammation is the big one that we hear about. Vascular immune dysfunction and oxidative stress. And so when we look at the artery like that as a muscle and how it heals, supplements and food make a big difference as to how you can heal that arterial wall. Right? And it's important to see where deficiencies are and where you're at, and then replenish them. And then I'm going to let Erin talk about it, and I'm going to jump back and forth with Erin today. I'm going to give my 2 cents here and there. We're going to kind of talk together about this, but she's going to talk specifically about the supplements and what the differences are and all the big questions. So without further ado, welcome Erin.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. So as Diamond said, what I would like to hopefully portray to you today is the difference between the multi-levels of quality that's available to you out there. There is a huge difference between what you might see at a big box store or like a drugstore versus something that you don't see very often, which is usually considered like behind the counter at your clinician's office. So we're going to dive into a little bit about that. And like one gentleman had said, he had a really hard time finding, trying to order things off our website. And we definitely make it very difficult for patients to get their hands on our products. And that's really, you don't want self-diagnosis to happen. You want to drive things through your clinician so that you're utilizing it properly. So we take our job very seriously as a company. We've been around for 30 years now, and we expanded into Canada for 3 years. So we're still growing, we're still new. They hired 4 reps across the country, and I was lucky to be one of them. And I had gone through 10 weeks of extensive training. I really had no idea what I was getting into when I started this job. I thought I was selling vitamins to a health food store. And so for for me, it was really eye-opening seeing what we're doing for the medical industry. And typically in the US, we work with MDs, so 96% of our business is working with medical doctors in their clinics, and they utilize our products as like a prescription. So we call it functional medicine. But obviously that frame of medicine is different in Canada, so it's been a little bit of a different scene here. It's been a bit of an uphill battle trying to get the message across in terms of professional grade supplements and utilizing them in everyday medicine. So we are.
And with that said, it was, sorry to interrupt you, of course, but with that said, I've known about orthomolecular for a long time, and I'm like, okay, how can I bring these across the border safely? And legitimately, yes, we can bring them on as providers, but we require specific numbers on their products, and they got so many other great products, and they've been rolling them out one after another, and finally getting some really good stuff that we're recommending to you as to how we can take and improve heart health. And so slowly they're coming over the border, so I don't have to sneak some stuff over for you guys once in a while. So.
Yeah, and we do have we have various different lines, so things like women's health, we have immune, GI, and cardiovascular health, as well as a musculoskeletal line that we're expanding on. So we have bits and pieces of it available here, and available at the HeartFit Clinic. You have all the best products that are available to you. So I'd like to just go over, just have to reach my arm across it. I'll just put it on this one. Okay, just has to stay on the arrow on the arrow. So what is functional medicine? It's things that you can incorporate into your daily lifestyle. It has to be functional for you. It's just small changes to make every single day. Ortho actually comes from a Greek term meaning heal the gut first. It's not, I get the question a lot if I'm a dentist company or what have you, but no, it's heal the gut. It is preventative medicine, so these are things that we can take every day to better ourselves in the future. It's all natural and complementary to any pharmaceutical medicine. So we're not saying take this, don't take that necessarily, but we're saying if you are on this medication, here's how we can help with some of the adverse side effects. So we address drug nutrient depletion, and the idea with natural medicine is you make multiple changes in multiple different areas to achieve a desired result. Typically, pharma will have a one pill, one mechanism of action. This, you can make multiple different changes. And so it's alternative forms of healthcare. There's alternative options for you. And it is very personalized. So that is like what Diamond and the HeartFit Clinic are doing, is it's extremely personalized to that one area of health that you're all working on for yourselves. And I definitely give you all kudos for taking interest in your own health and for being here tonight and for contacting Diamond. I think that's incredible, just to step out of our standard of care.
So the nutrient depletions, the drug nutrient depletions, I know most of you in the room have done that, the micronutrient testing. And I know orthomolecular is really involved with that portion of it as well, because when you have deficiencies in the blood and they're over a long period of time, and I just want to quickly talk about this, I know Aaron will talk a little more, but when we're talking about serum versus intracellular, and when I look at serum, it's what your doctor can get done in our lab services, and we can order that for you in our clinic, but when we order it in lab services here in Canada, what they're doing is looking at serum levels, which can wildly fluctuate based on how you sleep, what you ate that day, what's going on, so it can wildly fluctuate on a daily basis. And so it's important to then look at the intracellular side of things where we actually open up the white blood cell and we grow the specimen in the lab and we see where the 6-month deficiencies are. And so we get a better picture as to where those are. I'm due for one here in a bit, but I did mine, I think it was last year, and so I had B12 and selenium that was deficient. So then my solution is the B12 supplement, and then I take a handful of Brazilian nuts every day. So that's my solution to then understanding the deficiencies. Because if I stay long term in that deficiency, that's where a complex of myriad of other concerns happen. And that's a whole other presentation that sort of some of you have heard me already talk about. But that's getting into the nutrient side of things from that side.
Yeah, but that's a good point. It's not all about take these supplements and you'll be feeling much better. It is first all to be changed in your diet, and then sometimes we're just too depleted in a certain area, or our body can't necessarily synthesize that. We may not have access to these superfoods that will help us in certain ways. So that's when you incorporate some supplements. So I just brought this up as sort of the way our traditional healthcare model is, and you guys are all familiar with this. We've all been there. You have your traditional doctor, and he's bouncing from room to room, and the average patient visit lasts about 5 to 10 minutes. There was a study done, and it was less than that. It was between 6 and 7 minutes on average. So that study was done in the United States, but don't think by any means that I'm knocking this form of practice. It's just the way that things are, and we know this. So they're seeing a broad spectrum of diseases, conditions, you name it. Wide range of patient types, different ages and demographics. And their biggest thing, and I will meet with MDs and try and talk about how to incorporate this into their daily practice. And the biggest piece of feedback that I hear is, I do not have time for this. Like, there's no time. I have people waiting in every room. I couldn't possibly dive into things diet and give them a diet plan or talk about ingredients like we discussed in our meeting. And I can understand that, but that is my role, is we provide clinicians with educational tools and resources to help implement this quickly into their practice, or to have them get on board with making the recommendation.
The Hartford plan.
Like the Hartford plan. Exactly. So if they did have the time to talk about it, their average appointment would be 1 hour minimum. And then there's that personalized care, so. All right, so now we're gonna get a little bit into supplements. I'd like to just help you out a little bit on what to look for. And I did choose one that we'll dig into a little bit later, but it's one that we all probably take, especially if we're talking about Heart Fit. The number one thing that you're gonna wanna look for, and it's so important, is quality. And that's really because this all comes down to raw materials. I'm constantly having discussions with practitioners about where we source our raw materials, why that matters, exclusive rights. You know, we've been in the industry for 30 years. We may have rights to some raw materials that other companies don't. These are all things that happen behind the scenes, of course, but it's still something to keep in mind. You want a really high quality product. We are dealing with organic items, so we're dealing with all natural. So just keep that in mind, because you want the potency to be there. So the processing is very important. Once again, this happens, these are things that go on when we're not really aware. And it's big differentiators between what goes on with drugstore items and what goes on with professional grade products. There's synthetic versions, and they may have a short half-life, so that means they won't last very long. like a vitamin D, for example, a synthetic version would have a 5-hour half-life, and a natural version that's high potency, high quality would have a 96-hour half-life. So that's gonna cause issues with blood. You want that long half-life, you wanna stay stable on those vitamins. You don't have to take as much either when they're processed naturally. That was just sitting on the arrow there, but it keeps moving. Okay. Dosing again, so when you're looking at the label, you do want a high potency product. Nothing too crazy, like a 50,000 IU vitamin D is probably not the best. It's not available in Canada. Canada's pretty safe with what they're allowed to regulate, but don't be too scared about a high potency. You do want high potency if you're taking it, especially if you're depleted in it. The less capsules, the better. If you read the label and it says take 1 capsule and you see it's a high dose, then that's good. You don't have to take as many. It'll be easier to take on a daily basis. So better patient compliance. And then you're looking for a doctor's brand. So ours, for example, but there's a lot of other professional brands as well. You could only get through your clinician, but if you did happen to go shop at a health food store, say, then you may ask them, what kind of professional brands do you carry? I'm looking for a really good quality supplement. And then you can tell them, I want something high dose that's been processed properly. See what they have for you. The availability, I know that it may be frustrating by not being able to order our products directly online or any other companies that really do that. We definitely take it to the furthest extent. Some companies will sell online, but that's actually a good thing. You don't want it so readily available out there. So we don't sell to health food stores or Amazon. This is medicine to us, this functional medicine. Amazon especially is a major red flag. There's some nightmare stories out there where you can order products and it's been tampered with. You don't really know what you're getting. You could order a certain vitamin and they've changed the inside of the product. They've sort of mocked the product essentially. So I wouldn't necessarily trust Amazon for your nutrient support. So let's do an example of omega-3s. So this is fish oil. And just to give you an idea, the reason we're taking fish oil is to consume more fish in our diet. That all came about when, it was actually in the 70s, they studied areas of cardiovascular wellness and low mortality rates. And they pretty much broke down each of those areas to the consumption of fish in their diet. So we necessarily aren't consuming enough on a daily basis, so we supplement with omegas. Omegas can actually be tested in your blood, so you can test for your omega-3 index. And if it's normal, that's great. If your omega-3 index is low, you will have high inflammation in your body. So I did use a Costco brand. I could have used Jameson as well. They're all kind of the same. Hopefully this clarifies a few things for you, but one thing is, like I said, we're taking fish to mock, we're taking fish oil to mock eating a piece of fish. So we want this as close to the bioavailability of a fish as possible. So fish oils is definitely something that you don't want to cheap out on necessarily. And it is probably the most saturated industry that there is. There's tons of omegas out there. So what we're looking for is high potency. So this one's not too bad. It's 720 milligrams, 440 milligrams EPA, and 280 DHA. So that's all right. One thing I don't really see here is a natural triglyceride. Triglyceride is the fatty acid of the fish. Doesn't say anything about that here. So I've circled that. And then it does say each enteric soft gel. So anytime you see enteric coating on something, that's just a huge red flag. What that means is the outside of the omega, the soft gel, is coated in a substance, and it's a chemical substance, and it's the same chemical that's used in paint. So it's like putting a paint chip into your body and then expecting your body to recognize that and break that down. That's not what we're consuming fish for. So enteric coating on anything is bad. And it doesn't really say where it's sourced from. If you looked at our bottle, we wouldn't necessarily tell you on the bottle, but we have patient handouts so that we let you know where our fish is coming from. And I'll dive into that too. The other thing, the dosing here, 2 soft gels daily, 2 soft gels 2 times per day. And even at that rate, it's not necessarily very much. So I can already tell just from my knowledge of the industry, this is a synthetic version of fish. So they just, that's important, I guess, because when you consume the omega, you want your body to recognize it, absorb it, utilize it. If it's synthetic, it's changed its fatty acid structure, so it's not recognizing your body, it's not broken down as easy, it's a chemical that's going in. It won't be able to read that signal. And then I did point out, this is actually a plus, that they're using small fish. Anchovies, sardines, or mackerel, you want small fish to be used in your omegas. I'd be wary of salmon. Any larger fish will eat small fish and will be more and more exposed to mercury and toxins. So that's at least good. I'm betting, since they don't mention anything, this fish is probably sourced from China, and so it's very industrialized waters. So I'd be worried about the toxicity with that. So here's an example of ours. And there's a lot of good ones out there, so this isn't a big sales pitch like buy our omegas, it's just letting you know. And we actually do have the most pure form of omegas in the industry. So ours is a natural triglyceride. In our sheet, it actually mentions that it is sourced off the coast of Chile. So it's one of the least industrialized waters of the world. And all of it is done onshore. All of the processing is there. It's not shipped around the world. It is a 3-month processing time. So from the time it's a fish in the water to the time it's encapsulated and put on the shelf, it is 3 months. The others I should have mentioned is actually 36 months. So that's 3 years that a standard fish oil takes. 3 years versus 3 months. So you can tell which one is probably a little bit better. So the
I
potency
remember the
of this,
first time that you gave me fish oil, you said bite into it. So,
I brought some, and I'd be happy to pass them around, and you should be able to bite into a fish oil. So, I mean, we can pass those around if you like, but yeah, or we can pass them around afterwards, but you should be able to bite into it, and you can taste the freshness and the purity of it. So, I've gone into some offices, and they've tried ours, and they said, oh, but we're happy with our omegas. Okay, let's try some of them, and they're rancid. So, you can just tell right from biting into it.
You compare the krill's the big push for krill oil.
Mm-hmm.
How's your company see krill compared to what you have there on the screen?
Yeah, so krill would probably be good for skin conditions or more of a specialized. It's a bit of a fad right now.
so I'm not a big fan of using it for cardiovascular health. Yeah.
It's all over that. Krill is better than any omega-3.
Yeah, but it's,
Yeah.
so I can give you some literature, and I'm happy to provide it for everybody. For when you're looking at krill oil versus an actual omega-3, krill oil doesn't get the same effects on cardiovascular health as it does a specific omega-3. Now and I'm not trying to dismiss this is actually one of the top brands out there, but there are other pharmaceutical grade omega-3s that you can get out on the market that are really good, but you want an omega-3.
There's a second,
As a,
CeeLo, there's a push on CeeLo. Mind you, it's got 369 in it, I think.
yeah, and that's what I was gonna say, so it's not
And it's
just
made
omega-3.
in Canada, northern Manitoba.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the big push, it's Canadian made, it's pure and all this
The
stuff.
concern is that, you know, in our North American diet, we get too much 6-9, so you don't really need a supplement with it as well, so.
That's a good point, so the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is, about 20-1, so we don't need more omega-6 in our diet. We're getting enough of that. We've actually made a push since the 70s when it was first researched, and it stood at about a 50-1. That was when processed foods started coming out, those microwavable dinners. So when they advertise omega-6 and omega-9, it's a bit of a marketing ploy, and that's what happens with a lot of these vitamins in this industry. It's a lot of marketing, there's some fads. If you just heard about it, just wait a little while. If it's still around in a couple of years, maybe it's something to be said for it, but, yeah, so this one, it does say on the label that it's a triglyceride, something you definitely wanna look for, it means it's natural. Ours is a high potency, and you just need 1 capsule per day, essentially. So instead of taking approximately 5 or 6 of the Kirkland brand to get this kind of dose and potency, you're taking 1 of our capsules. So I did an estimate on cost. Ours would probably be $20 more, but you probably get another month worth out of the bottle than you would with the Kirkland at the rate that you're taking it. So this is 70% better absorbed because it's recognized, it's taken up in the body, it sees it as a fat and starts to utilize it. And it's 290% better utilized, which is what we want. We're taking this, we want our bodies to use it. And of course, it's non-enteric coated. And so that's just to kind of prove my point that I didn't make up that point. It's 70% better absorbed. And the ethyl ester would be the other form, the synthetic form of what I was talking about. So just a couple things. So you wanna look for less capsules, high potency, natural additives. So sometimes there's 100 milligrams additional things on the label that's not accounted for. Ours is 100 milligrams, but it's vitamin E, just to keep the fish oil stable. The Kirkland brand, they had about 400 milligrams that we don't know what's in there. And then you do want a shorter expiration date. So don't buy a big thing of something that's gonna last you an entire year. If it expires in a couple months, that may even be a good thing, because that means it's all natural, it's organic, right? It's not processed. And then the no enteric coating and the small fish. If you can find out the location, that's great. And then the natural triglyceride. Try not to look too hard into the cost of this. Just know you're investing in your health and it's important. And then also, I mean, if someone makes a recommendation for you and the omegas are there in their office, like Diamond has probably had 50 reps come in and try and talk to him about their omegas. And he's definitely tested it out and done the research for you, so. All right, so I am gonna switch gears a little bit here.
Make it a little prelude to this, so that's okay too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just to finishing up with the omega-3 side of things and that part of it, that's true. I mean, I've gone out and for those who don't know, this is fun for me. So I like to go out and source the best things for you to make sure that I can get the best optimal for your heart health out with it. So I'm always, and Aaron's right, there's, and I'm just gonna say it because you might hear him, so there's Metagenics and Zymogen, really good companies out there that are doing some good stuff, and I'll pick and choose from different companies, but you know, Ortho Molecular is definitely one of the companies that we see good results with, and that's one thing I'm happy to see over and over again. Just so I'm gonna give you a little introduction to the next talk I'm gonna do as well. I'm gonna get more specific as to what we can do to improve your heart health specifically, and I'm gonna go specific into conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, cholesterol, and I'm gonna talk about how we can cure those conditions with the use of supplements, but also some foods that I'm gonna recommend. So I'm gonna go more in depth with it. I'm gonna put a talk on presentation that way, where I'm gonna go into that part of it. And some really other cool things that are coming in the clinic that I'll take a second to say, is that we've got a nice online portal that's gonna be available to all of you, where we are able to provide you recipes and foods, and not everyone, and this is a separate talk that I'm gonna do, where we're gonna talk about all the different diets out there. So I'm gonna talk about the ketogenic diet, the paleo diet, I'm gonna talk about vegetarian and plant-based, and the benefits and risks of being on each one of those diets. And so, as you know, if you've read my book, and hopefully all of you have, is that I don't have a specific way of eating. I don't tell you to eat a specific way. But what I do ask you to get is the vegetables and the supplements that we're looking for to improve your heart health, and more importantly, individualize that to your specific condition. Right? That's what's important to me, and that's where I'm able to do that on a basis where I can get through that part of it. And so, getting into the gut health side of things, I have so much information I can share with you on gut health, and I can keep here for hours, but we won't do that today. I'll respect your time, and I also want to give a lot of opportunity for you to ask lots of questions today, because the questions that you have will help other people and in the room and whatnot. But 90% of all your diseases start in your digestive system. And when I talk about the artery as a muscle, not a pipe, and if we understand that there are, and I've explained it to many of you, that the artery has different linings to it, and there's an endothelial lining of the arterial wall. And some of you know the answer to this question is, what's the largest organ in your body? Sorry?
Skin.
Someone knows the right answer. Go ahead, Tom. The arteries, yeah, the inner lining of the arterial wall. It's called the endothelial lining. And the endothelial lining, if I attached all your arteries together, you'd be able to wrap around the world a couple times. That's how, like you just by yourself, that's how complex your vasculature system is. And so when we open up the inner lining of the arterial wall, which is the endothelial lining, our cholesterol doesn't just stick to this lining of the arterial wall and clog up like a kitchen sink pipe does. We know that now, right? And so how it does happen is that cholesterol starts to accumulate, and drama starts to happen inside that what we call the subendothelium. And that subendothelium is that whole process of where we have an endothelial lining, a subendothelium, and then the musculature is the same thing that happens inside the gut, inside the lining of the gut. And what we do not want is for essential nutrients to leak the gut earlier when they should be. Because if I ask you to take a supplement or ask you to eat some food groups, I want to make sure that you can eat those food groups and not have your gut leak that earlier. So that's what leaky gut is. And so we're going to talk about how to fix that with some nutrition. And this is one of my favorite topics, because actually it's one of my clients that got me on board with this, is that, Donnie, you really don't talk too much about gut health. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to learn more about it, because you don't go to school with that. And so I did a whole course just on gut health and what happens to the gut and how you heal it. It's very important to then reversing a disease process, because where it starts is in your digestive system. So anyway, go back.
That's good to say.
Yeah.
And
So this next picture really shows the next.
yeah. So how frequently are your general practitioners, the doctors that you're seeing at these clinics, how frequently are they talking to you about gut health?
Never.
Not so much, no. And so many conditions are linked to this. really, you can't go wrong. If you have a healthy gut, healthy life. So I'll show you a picture next, and we'll kind of go through this, and then I do bring it back again. So let me start on this side. So we have a healthy gut lining here. This is the epithelial layer, close up that Diamond was talking about. And so on the healthy side, these little, these microvilli here, like a sponge, those are mucus. It's your mucosal layer. This is going to be your first point of defense in warding off infection. These spaces that are in between here, these are tight junctures. So you want these to be spaced together. That's why this one looks good. And then this is really just tissue. So you want vitamins, minerals from your food to pass through here, but it will only, if it's healthy, it will only allow certain nutrients to pass by. It's essentially like a toll system. It allows certain things through if it approves. It can read the signals. From that, it will enter your immune system in here, and it's going to fire off the appropriate signals to the rest of your body, most likely up to your brain. If you've heard of that gut-brain connection, so it will take things, hey, this is energy, here we go, or whatever else, maybe zinc, fight off any infection. And then on this side, so this would be an example of an unhealthy epithelial layer. So really you have your mucosal layers breaking down pretty much to nothing, and your tight junctures are spread apart, so things are passing right through. And if they are spread apart for too long, it's gonna pass right through your immune system, into your bloodstream. It can be exposed on your skin. It can be really dangerous and toxic to the body, especially if this has been happening for a long time. And you can almost gauge where your GI tract might sit by just thinking of your own personal history. And if you have a practitioner that would sit down and talk to you about your medical history, you might even be able to tell where you may lie on the spectrum. But what I mean by that is if you were a child on antibiotics all the time, you had earaches constantly, or you had an unhealthy lifestyle, stress can really cause a lot of inflammation in the gut. Medications, especially pain medications, they will tear this to shreds. There was a study that came out a couple months back that mentioned capsules or pills, now they contain gluten in them. So gluten is not necessarily bad, it's not a big evil, but it does cause some issues, and that can happen in everyone. Gluten will release a chemical called zonulin when it's consumed, and zonulin is the number one sort of source of pushing these tight junctures apart. We definitely don't want that to happen. So the more gluten that's consumed, the more zonulin that's being released, and if you continue with an unhealthy lifestyle, it will just seep right through. So you can see this. We'll talk about some conditions.